Well, hello everyone. Um, Something happened to me today, and God is telling me I need to share it with you. I took some notes, and hopefully, it won't be too distracting as I refer to them, just to marshal my thoughts as I'm sharing this with you. Um, Today, well, yeah, yesterday would have been my father's 97th birthday, and a week ago was my own 69th birthday. And that's the same age my father was when he died. And so over the last few weeks, I've been, pondering the topic of mortality, of course, and the similarity of the numbers, and wondering, how many more days I have left, and things like that. Uh, what's interesting is yesterday I didn't remember my father's birthday at all. I got too busy doing something else, and I just forgot all about it. But then early this morning, I had a dream about my father. And uh, in order to understand the significance of all this, you have to understand a little bit about my relationship with my father. Um, he was a very prideful man. Um, he was an absolute authoritarian uh, within his family and in his professional life as well. And he was, in short, what you would call a control fanatic. And so from that, it's easy to see where I myself got my tendencies toward perfectionism and authoritarianism, domination of my family members, control of them. Uh, it's something I have to continually struggle against day by day, uh, and with limited success. I'm sure that my sons and my wife can testify. Um, Now, my relationship with my father wasn't exactly adversarial, I wouldn't say, um, but it was never, by the same token, either convivial or friendly. Uh, I loved my father. I obeyed my father. I respected my father. Um, but I never really enjoyed spending time with him. Now, I shouldn't say never. I rarely enjoyed spending time with him. There was the occasional gem of a memory that I cling on to. Uh, but for the most part, my childhood memories were uh, unpleasant with regard to my father. Um, he was a very sharply sarcastic man, and I have to be honest, he wasn't unfunny in his sarcasm. Some of his sarcasm was quite funny, actually. But he could quickly become hurtfully coarse and scathingly critical. Um, and because of that, you know, I, as I said, my memories of my life with him were not that pleasant. And I think uh, most of my, well, all of my brothers and sisters could would say the same thing. Um, and so when I came of age, I couldn't wait to get out from under his thumb. And uh, once I did, I vowed that I would never return. In fact, I once told my future wife at the time that she would never have the chance to meet him because I wasn't ever going back to see him. Um, I ended up backing off of that, of course, but um, over the years, our relationship, sort of stabilized. We both mellowed out a little bit. Um, and it became one of what you would call mutual tolerance. I would say that we both felt what I would term a duty of devotion. Uh, he was my family, I was his family, and so we both felt an obligation to have a relationship with each other uh, of some form. Uh, um, And, with that said, we developed this mutual tolerance of one another, but neither of us would have chosen the other uh, as the person we most wanted to be stranded on a desert island with. Um, Now, with that said, we had this sort of private little armistice between ourselves, and it lasted for decades. There were never any passionate flare ups either towards seeking one another to draw closer or to, hostility. It was just sort of a quiet, uneasy peace between us. And that went on for decades, as I said. Then, when Dad became ill with the cancer that eventually killed him, uh, all of us, I think, at least I can speak for myself and my father, made some feeble attempts to draw closer to one another, to bridge that gap that had built up over the years between us. And we did that really out of a mutual sense of duty rather than a true desire to draw closer. And as I said, I can only speak for myself, but I think probably my brothers and sisters would agree with this. Um, and during that time, I did, on a couple of different occasions, witness, testify to the gospel of Jesus Christ with my father. And that's really kind of odd when I think about it, because at the time, I wasn't actually a follower of Jesus Christ myself. I was a believer, but I hadn't devoted my life to following him, to discipleship, and I hadn't committed myself to make myself subservient to his lordship. Um, and yet I did witness the gospel to him. It reminds me of something that Paul said. He said that some preach the gospel out of truth or in truth, and some out of selfish pride and selfish desires. And he said, but whether in truth or in selfishness, the gospel of Jesus is preached, and in that I will rejoice. And so I did, testify to the gospel to my father, and he didn't, he listened politely, and he didn't reject it outright as my mother did when I witnessed it to her late in her life. Um, but by the same token, he didn't, you know, show enthusiastic commitment to it either, at least not in my presence. Um, and afterward, we never spoke of it again. So, because of all this, this dream this morning was very important to me spiritually. And, before I tell you about the dream, I just want to say I'm not one that, attributes a lot of weight to or importance to dreams. Um, and in fact, I listen with a great deal of skepticism to those who do uh, consider dreams and visions, uh, you know, weighty, or attribute to them great insights or whatever you might say. Um, I am by no means a mystic. I'm a very literal kind of a guy, and in fact, not very spiritual at all by my nature. Um, but having said that, I know that God, in the past, in the Bible, used dreams and visions to communicate with various people. And, there are multiple instances of that. And so if God could do that with and through and for those people, then of course, if he so desires, he can do the same with and for and through me. And so I'm open to his leading uh, by dreams, uh, even though I'm not a very, as I said, not a mystic by any stretch. Um, so in this dream, my father and I were together, and we were truly enjoying each other's company. We were staying in this huge hotel, each in separate rooms, but we were spending our days together. enjoying this hotel, this dream life that we were experiencing, and sharing intimate conversations with each other, truly enjoying each other's company, something we never did in life. And so it was quite intriguing to me, if you will. And then when I awoke, I realized that this dreamscape was for me a vision of heaven and my Father in it. And so, was God trying to tell me that Dad is waiting for me in heaven? Did my dad come to belief in the resurrection of Jesus Christ? And did he confess and call upon the name of Jesus for salvation? I don't know. As I said, he didn't reject the gospel outright as my mother had when I witnessed it to her. But I just don't know. Will we all be together someday? Just me and Dad? Just me? I don't know. One thing I do know for certain is all of us will know soon enough. And so I won't say that this dream was disturbing, but it was challenging, and it was enlightening, at least in terms of me learning some things about myself that I hadn't considered before. And I found it altogether encouraging. And the reason that I say that is because of something else that happened today. Last Sunday, our pastor asked us to come this Sunday to church with a favorite passage out of the Psalms. And I couldn't really go with my very favorite psalm, which is Psalm 51, because I just preached a whole message at church a couple of Sundays ago when the pastor was sick on Psalm 51. So I couldn't go with that. I can't really go with Psalm 91, which is the soldiers, the great psalm for the soldiers. 10,000 may fall at your side, but it will not come near you. Because one of my brothers in Christ in the church is, I know he's going to be sharing Psalm 91. So, and then I couldn't go with Psalm 8, another one of my favorites. What is man that you would consider him? Because the pastor himself preached on Psalm 8 a few weeks back. So I settled on Psalm 139, which is another one of my favorites. And in that psalm, David speaks about God's intimate knowledge of us. He says that he knew us when we were in our mother's womb, and that we're fearfully and wonderfully made by him. And he knows us to the very depths of our nature, which stands to reason since he created us. But in fact, he knows us better than we can know ourselves, more intimately than we can know ourselves. David said, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It's unattainable. And so God knows us far better than we can ever know ourselves. And furthermore, David says that, he says, you knew them before there were any of them, the days that are ordained for me. God has known, always has known, and knows exactly how many days we have in our lives. And so that hooks in with this dream and about this thinking about mortality that I've been doing over the last several weeks. But David also says something that's just wonderful in that psalm, that God's thoughts toward us are uncountable, innumerable. His love for us is infinite, far beyond what we can even imagine. And his intents for us are always good and always righteous. They're always for our very best. He wants the very best for us, even when we don't know what the very best for us is. He has that in his mind and in his control. And so as I was thinking about Psalm 139, it struck me that I don't know whether Dad will be in heaven waiting for me when I get there, but I do know that God knows and always has known. And that I find that very reassuring. It means that God's trustworthy, that we can put our reliance on him because of that devotion that David talked about, how his thoughts toward us are innumerable. His devotion toward us is infinite and always righteous and good and true. So I shouldn't fret over whether my father or my mother are in heaven, because God holds all of our souls sovereignly. He's our creator, and he, put it simply, he owns us, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not. And he always has. So in Matthew 6:27, Jesus asks, which of you by being anxious can add a single hour to the span of his life? And by the same token, which of us by being anxious can influence another one's salvation? We can't. There's nothing we can do about anyone's salvation except our own. We're the only ones who can choose to follow Jesus for ourselves, and we're the only ones whose futures, whose eternal destiny are impacted by our choice. We can't, our worrying and our pleading and our cajoling and whatever we choose might to do can't influence another person's salvation, really. We can witness the gospel to them, tell them the truth, but it's up to them to decide what to do with the truth when they hear it, whether to believe it or to reject it outright. But that's still very reassuring, because God has all these things in his hand. He is sovereign in our salvation as well as everything else. So, as I said, I found this dream quite reassuring because it reminded me of God's sovereignty. Now, whether, Dad and I will meet in that great hotel that was in my dream, I don't know. But I know that God knows, and I know that his care for both of us is infinite, and so I can trust in that. And that's all I needed to share with you. Don't worry about your loved ones. Worry about yourself in terms of salvation. We can, when we choose to follow the Lord, witness his gospel to those that we love by the way we conduct our lives, our new lives, as new creations in the Spirit of God, how we live our lives. There's nothing that's going to adversely impact people's outlook toward the gospel than us professing the gospel but then not living out the gospel. in humility and in spirit and in truth as God calls us to do. So that would be a cautionary tale to us, but the encouragement is God's got it. So I love you all. God bless you all and keep you. And don't worry, God is bringing things together as He has planned since before the beginning, and He is trustworthy, and we can look forward with great anticipation to what He has in store because He loves us infinitely. So, good night. I have to go to bed and get up and share that psalm in the morning. I love you. Bye-bye.